I think it's taken us 7 weeks or so to get through 7 verses. So we're just trucking right along. But today, I really do want to get us to a place I've been trying to get over a couple of weeks. I so appreciate all the discussion. So if I go 2 sentences into this and somebody raises a hand and we go there, we go there. I want to start out by saying, and I'm going to try and depending on time, I want to get back to this. I don't want to. What happened yesterday here in Allen has rattled me. It's probably rattled all of you. If you were in first service, you'll know that we just had a prayer session. If you're going to second service, you'll probably start that. I have shared with you over the last several weeks that just because my head has been in here on this particular study, and specifically about Genesis 6 and all of that about how evil came about, I've been very attuned to that. And then it's, Joe sent me a text yesterday and she says, it's so sad that this has become our norm. It's just become the norm. The news comes on and all of a sudden I'm no longer surprised. Hearing this news is not abnormal anymore. It is the norm. And so, how do we change that? And I think that's the discussion we had this morning. So that's a lot of what we've been talking about here. Where did all of this, where did the world as we see it today, where did it come from? And we've talked over and over and over about Genesis chapter 3, 6, and 11. The fall brought in death, 6 brought in evil, and chapter 11 brought in chaos. This is nothing new. This is nothing new under our sun. This has been around forever. It's getting more closer to home, and it's becoming more frequent. And from time to time, we just go, what in the world is going on? And if you're a person of faith, just like Anthony's let out his prayer, he said in his prayer, I know I'm going to hear. Why? What's up with all of this? And as Christians look at it as if we've got the answer. Well, we do. All right. I want to get into to try and wrap this up a little bit and tie some things over. So I keep pointing to this so that the video lessons, because I know from week to week some of you can't be in the class. How many of you have videoed yourself when you're teaching a class? Raise your hand. Okay. 1, 2. All right. It is the most horrible thing in the world when you go back and watch what you did and you go, what? So I went back last week and listened. Twice last week, not once, but twice, talking about, Jesus on the beach and Peter and the boys in the boat out there. And I said, Peter is on land, and Peter's in the boat. I thought, first time I heard it, I said, did you really say that? And then I said it again. So it's perfectly okay. I'm telling you that story so that the video will know that I corrected myself. And secondly, it's perfectly okay to raise your hand and say, Jess, did you mean Jesus? So please do that when you hear me say something really stupid.
We're hearing so many new things, we just thought that was...
Oh, yeah. Well, I did talk about the 2 Yahwehs at one point, so maybe there's 2 Peters. Who knows? I don't know. Okay. I said I was not going to bring up Jude 6 because y'all are probably just fed up to hear with 6, but I have to bring up 6 to bring in 7 because there's a bridge. All right, so if you have your text, we're going to do 6 and 7 together. And it's important I do them together because they're linked. So, and the angels who did not stay within their own position of authority, but left their proper dwelling, Jesus has kept in eternal chains under gloomy darkness until the judgment of the great day. Just as. Okay, so we've been in verse 6 forever. So now we're going to tie in 7, and there's a hook. Just as Sodom and Gomorrah and the surrounding cities, which what? Likewise. That's the hook. Which likewise indulged in sexual immorality and pursued unnatural desire, different strange flesh, serve as an example by undergoing a punishment of eternal life. I want to mention something quickly about this. Huh?
Eternal fire.
Eternal fire. What did I say?
Life.
Same thing, right? Thank you, Jim. Eternal fire. This thing about unnatural desire. The difference. Jim's getting a kick out of this. He's still laughing. What does your version say that where it says pursued unnatural desire? Anybody's version? Huh?
Perversion.
Perversion? A lot of times where it says that it may say strange flesh or different flesh. The point that I want to make here, because it's important as we get into Sodom and Gomorrah, this is not talking about same sex. This is talking about, that would be same flesh. This is talking about unnatural desire, which is a different or a strange flesh. If you do I don't have time to do this today. If you go back and do the word study, all the way through on this denotes that this is, in Sodom and Gomorrah, this is strange flesh, meaning fleshly human with divine. This is the unnatural desire that's talked here. Hold that thought, and I'll talk more about it as we go in. I just wanted to point it out in the text right here. Okay, Sodom and Gomorrah. Everybody knows the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, right? Everybody knows it? Okay, well, we're going to go through it anyway. So Genesis 18, 1 through 15. If you want to turn to Genesis, just so, because I'm not going to read these. I don't have time because it's Genesis 18 and Genesis 19, the full chapter. So I'm just going to walk you through briefly and just make some points about kind of what's going here. So in Genesis 17, it's really important. We have this thing where God has already come to Abraham and said, you're going to, and promised a son. All right, to Sarah. Abraham laughs because he's an old dude. Sarah's kind of in her later years. I'm careful what I say about a woman's age. But so in 17, Adam laughs about this whole thing. Well, in 18, Yahweh shows up again. Interesting, when Abraham is standing at his door of his tent, and he looks out and he sees three men. Y'all remember when we talked about twin powers before, about how Yahweh shows up sometimes in human form? So Abraham looks out and he sees three men. Well, he immediately recognizes one of the men to be Yahweh. And then the other two are his traveling compadres, which are angels that are traveling with him. Okay, so these three men show up. Abraham runs out, greets them, brings them in, goes and tells Sarah, hey, cook something up, goes out, tells one of his farm hands, kill the fatted calf, bring it all in. And remember, this isn't Arby's. So it takes a while to prepare the meat, to prepare the bread, to get everything all ready. And the three of them go, they're just, so Yahweh and his two buddies are hanging out until dinner's ready, which I think is an interesting part of the story if you kind of slow down and think through all this. So Yahweh is telling, in human form, and he's speaking directly to Abraham, and he tells him about, I'm going to come back in a year, and Sarah's going to have a son. And what does Sarah do? She laughs. Now, when Abraham laughed before, God didn't really get all over him, but this time, God said, Abraham, how come Sarah laughed? And Sarah said, hands on hips, isn't that what ladies do? Hands on hips, I did not laugh. And he said, yes, you did. I just bring that out because I found it fascinating that someone would actually look at the eyes of Yahweh and say, I didn't do that. Oh, yeah? Okay. So, just kind of an interesting point. So Abraham then says, he says, you know what? He asked a rhetorical question at the end of this kind of section here. He asked a rhetorical question. He said, should I tell Abraham what I'm about to go down and do? That's rhetorical because he knows he's going to tell him. Because Abraham, I am going to bless him with this great nation. Should I tell him what I'm about to go down and do in Sodom and Gomorrah, or in Sodom? So he tells Abraham what he's about to do. That he's about to go down because of this outcry of this grievous sin that's going on in Sodom. What he's about to do. And so then we have in 18, 16 through 33, so Yahweh's heading down to Sodom to check out the outcry due to exceedingly grave sin. Abraham, the auctioneer, negotiates with Yahweh to save Lot's family. I wish I could do what an auctioneer does, how they talk real fast and do all of that, because it's hilarious to me how, and this kind of shows that because he starts out, Abraham says, but would you really wipe them out if there were 50 that were kind of good people? Yahweh says, I will not wipe them out if there's 50. But what if there was 45? I will not wipe it out if there was 45. What if there was 40? And he walks him all the way down to 10. And Yahweh keeps saying, okay, And I guess, if you've ever been involved in sales, which I have, what do you do once you get the answer you want? You shut up. So once he got 10, he was good. I think there's something behind that. Maybe he was counting, let's see, Lot's wife, 2 daughters, 2 sons, maybe a few favorite servants. 10's a good number, toast the rest. I'm ad-libbing here a little bit just because it's fun. Okay. So what happens so now then, Yahweh goes back and he sends his 2 angels to go down to Sodom. All right? So, and Abraham walks them out on their way, sends them on their way, as if angels need to be shown the way to get to where they want to go. But that's what he does. So 2 angels appear to Lot at the Sodom gate, right? So now we're in chapter 19. So these 2 angels appear. Lot just happens to be sitting at the gate. There's a story behind that. Lot begs them to come to his house. So he stops them at the gate and says, I want you to come aside with me and go to my house. The angels say, no, we want to go down and stay at the square. Lot says, no, I don't think you really want to do that. Just come with me and go to my house. I'll feed you. You can get cleaned up. We can get you up bright and early in the morning, have a few bagels, and I'll send you on your way. Okay? The men of the city surround the house, calling for the 2 male visitors. So Lot brings them into his home because he knows what's outside there. As I'm walking through this, I'm going to slow down a second. As I walk through this, I want you to start envisioning what's going on. So we're hearing this story with characters in it. I want you to almost kind of go Hollywood on me here just a minute. And I want you to envision this place. And I want you to envision just a darkness surrounding this place. And I've got a real vivid imagination. I can almost just envision this place, just almost smoke and vapor, just a really, really, really dark place. And one of those places when you walk into and you get a really bad vibe. You're not in a good place. Have you ever done that? Have you ever caught yourself in a place and you went, oh my word, Lord, just get me out of here and I'll promise to do whatever you ask me from now on. Just get me out of here safe. That's this kind of place. I've been in too many of those kind of situations. Another story, another time. So the men of the city surround the house, calling for the 2 male visitors because they want to have sex with them. That's exactly what they said. Your text may, but that's exactly what they're saying. Lot offers his young daughters in lieu of the gift. What? Come on. All right. I have 3 daughters. That ain't happening. Okay? But he goes out and says to these, and these are not just your typical sexually aroused people. These are animals. And he goes, and not 1 or 2, we're talking a bunch, because the text says they came from every quarter of the town. We're talking a bunch. And they're looking to gang rape these 2 men. That's what they're looking to do. And instead of gang raping these 2 men, Lot says, here's my 3 daughters who have had no relations. Do with them as you see fit. That's what the text actually says. Have your way with them. Pause for a minute. We're going to keep going. The men of the city refuse and turn on Lot. They say to him, you know what? No. And you know what? You came in here like a judge on us. We're going to do even worse to you than what we were going to do to your 2 guests. And so they start rushing the house. And what happens? The 2 angels reach out and grab Lot, physically pull him into the house, and cause a blindness to come upon those as they were rushing in to where they can't find the door. The angels escort Lot and his wife and 2 daughters out of town. And at first they tell him, do you have anybody in the other family? He's going to run and grab his son-in-laws. So he goes to wake up his son-in-laws and tell them what's going on. And they look at him like he's just drunk or an idiot and say, so shame on them. They stay. He grabs his 2 daughters. They boogie out of town with the angels. Lot's wife disobeys the angels. They told them specifically, do not turn around. And she turned around while the town's being toast. And she turns into a pillar of salt. There's a whole longer story behind that, too. Sodom, Gomorrah, and all surrounding towns in the valley are destroyed. So it's not just Sodom and it's not just Gomorrah. Where Yahweh was talking to Abraham, they were up high, the town where they were at. They looked down onto Sodom and Gomorrah. The angels went down to Sodom. And so this is down in the valley. And the angels were given instruction to toast the entire valley. Just turn every little surrounding city, toast it. But Lot begs him not to hit Zor, because Lot's afraid that he's not going to make it up to the top of the hill. And I don't think it has to do with physical things. I think it has more to do with, I'm just not going to make it out of this place alive. All of a sudden, the fear of what's going on is about to happen is hitting him. So the angels agreed to not toast Zor. Let him go to Zor. He goes to Zor, hangs out there for a while, and then he gets the heck out of there. All right, so we're going to keep flying here. Was homosexuality the exceedingly grave sin? So I'm just going to ask some questions. Not looking for an answer right now, but I want to just get some thoughts in your head and make a couple of observations, and we'll come back. So was homosexuality the exceedingly grave sin? I bring that up and make that point because typically when we talk about Sodom and Gomorrah, this is what this thing is all about. We use this as a reason for why homosexuality is so wrong. Okay? Whatever your thoughts on that are, that's typically what we use this verse for. Okay? The reader of this, meaning the reader of back when someone would have read Genesis, and the reader of Jude. The reader in this, they know that the visitors are angels. But remember, everybody else in this plot doesn't know that they're angels. They don't know this. The text doesn't indicate that Lot or any of the townspeople know that these men are angels. It's just something to think about. There is the added element of threatened rape to Lot's guests. This was not going to be a sensual, sexual encounter. It was going to be rape. And violation of his hospitality. Okay, I'm going to stop and pause here because I want to bring up something about just people of that time. Anybody in here, have you ever read the book or seen the movie Lone Survivor? It's a story about Marcus Luttrell, however you want to say that last name. Without doing the whole thing, but trying to run through it real fast. He was, during the Afghanistan war, he and 3 other SEALs are sent out on the job and dropped off on a mountaintop. Their job was, he was a sniper, their job was to take out this high official Taliban from a far off shot along the way. They get there, they get all set up, they get blown, their cover gets blown. They wind up with about 100 and something Taliban on their backs. Gunfight comes up. All of his 3 buddies are killed. About 16 other special ops guys try and come in and do a rescue in a helicopter. They get shot down by a grenade. They're all killed. Marcus lives, and it's remarkable. It's a story how he even survived. He winds up getting into the hands of, because he's totally broken, can't even hardly move, where he finally lands. And this tribe's where he was at, this local tribesman, there was some that were out, and one of them with his 2 sons spotted. They make the decision on the spot to pull him in and to overshadow and protect him. In that tradition, and I'm going to butcher this, Pashtun Wali, I think is what it is. There's the Pashtun people, or Pashtun in Afghanistan. It's a code. It's a code that they live by. And one part of the code is if they bring someone in and offer them protection, they are right immediately giving up themselves and whatever they have to do to protect that individual. Now, not only did he do that with him and his two sons, but then they drug him back into the tribe. As soon as they bring him into the village, he just declared that same code on the entire village. That entire village will do whatever that takes, if that means every one of them dying, to protect the person they brought in. That code is still in act today. Story ends. The good guys find out where he's at. The Taliban attacks the village. And right as they start to attack the village, two Black Hawk choppers show up, and that pretty much ends that thing. They get Luttrell out of there. He's safe. He's almost dying, so they just rush him off. He doesn't get to see the guy that saved him. A while later, I don't know if it was months or years, but sometime later, he rejoins and meets this guy that saved his life, and they're best buds to this day. Okay, I tell you that story because, Donna, just your reaction to this thing about offering your daughters. That, back then in this tradition, those two angels, the two men, they were under Lot's shadow, his shadow of protection. He would have done whatever it took to save those two. That's an added element in this text that I think most of us don't comprehend or understand. I still would not do that, but I just want to throw that out just in case. Okay, the text also indicates that the whole town is part of the violation. And when I say the whole town, it just talks about men, but later it talks about the whole town from every quarter. So it could be that there was men, women. The main thing here is that this is not just a few, it is the whole, everybody's in on this thing. Okay? All right, no doubt the violation has a sexual element, no doubt. No doubt. But is that all? Is that all that this is? Back to Jude. Jude ties the sin of the angels in verse 6 to the sin of the inhabitants of Sodomites in verse 7. But both the angels and the Sodomites left their natural order of things. That's the key thing here. It's about leaving the natural order that Yahweh has set in place for everything. All right? So both the angels that we talked about in verse 6 for like 4 Sundays, and the Sodomites here left their natural order of things. The angels left their proper dwelling and engaged in sexual relations with humans. The Sodomites did the opposite by leaving their proper place and tried. They were not successful, but they tried to engage sex with angels.
But you said they didn't know.
That's correct. Hold that thought. I'm so glad. So you just proved to me you're paying attention.
The other question I had is, if this is such an evil place, why was Lot still living? Don't you generally try to get out of places like that?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay.
Did he live on the outskirts?
He was in the
Well,
That was in Sword.
yeah, I don't. It doesn't give us his address, but the fact that he was at the gate is an indication he did live out towards the city. And when you read in the text where it talks about how righteous Lot had to put up with this constant thing day in and day out, over and over and over, and that it was causing torment on him. So that doesn't answer your question, Donna, but it does say in I think it was in the 2 Peter passage. If you go back when we last week, in 2 Peter 2, it does mention that about Lot, how Lot had to put up with this and endured with this, and how it just tormented him over and over and over and over. Yes.
Generally, those who sit at the gate are the rulers,
Yeah.
the judges.
Opposite.
And that's what the people of Sodom referred to it as. You came in here as a foreigner.
As a
and
judge.
you think you're our judge?
Thank you, Tim. Yeah. Yeah. All right, so the sexual aspect of this sin, both in 6 and 7, is the vehicle by which both violated the order established by God. The inhabitants of Sodom did not know the visitors were angels, but the readers of Jude knew the whole backstory. Okay? So even though the inhabitants didn't know, we're reading Jude. Okay, so it's not so much to try to understand everything that's going on with Sodom and Gomorrah. It's trying to understand what is Jude trying to say in his dissertation to his readers about these people that are in violation and coming in and infiltrating them with false teaching. Okay, so let's just say with it. Yeah, Jane.
Well, remember in Genesis 18 when they first met, Abraham bowed down on the ground, bowed himself to the earth. Okay, so you're saying okay. So Abraham knew they were angels, but you're saying Lot didn't. Okay, does that make that?
Yeah. No. Abraham, well, I mean, Abraham knew because Yahweh and the angels are right there in front of him. And then Yahweh himself tells Abraham what he's about to go do, and that's why Abraham goes into auctioneer mode, because he knows Lot, his relative, is
And I
dead.
think I've always transferred it for if Abraham knew, then Lot knew. Well, that's just an assumption.
Well,
Right.
it says, when he saw them, he stood up to meet them and bowed down with his face to the ground. He's not gonna do that for
Right.
married people.
Well, that's Abraham, right?
No, that's
No, Lot, no, she's right, but if you do a word study on bowing down, that doesn't necessarily mean in a position of authority. Sometimes when you greeted someone, you would bow low. So that
all the way to
doesn't,
the ground.
so, I don't know. I cannot prove that Lot does not know that these are angels. But the text, if you read through the whole text, it would indicate that he does not.
But still, he was protecting them. because-
He was protecting them because, well, whether they were angels or whether they were just men,
Right.
once they came under his shadow, he was going to do whatever it took to protect them. Scholars, what I will say is if you go research this, and I've researched it pretty heavy, most scholars would say that Lot and the inhabitants of Sodom did not know that these men were angels. But I'm not going to say that I absolutely for 100% know that.
And man had an English when he blinded all of them.
Huh?
That was after.
Yeah.
Well,
Because, well, one reason I'm pretty sure about that, if Lot had known they were angels, I think he would have had a different message for those in the town that were trying to call them out. It would have been something, do you guys have a clue who's in here? And if he had known they were angels, do you think he would have gone out there by himself? He might have said, hey boys, let's all go out here together. Because they've got the power, I don't think I'm convinced, so you make your own call. I'm convinced Lot and the people did not know that these were angels. Okay, but if you disagree, that's fine. Okay. The inhabitants of Sodom did not know the visitors were angels, but the readers, of Jude knew the whole backstory. So what is important to know is that as Jude's writing this, the people that's hearing this, they knew all of this. And that's why Jude doesn't, and Anthony, I'll bring this up over and over and over. Jude doesn't go into a big description about all of this stuff because he knows his readers understand the story. He knows that. So he doesn't offer a whole lot of explanation about what's happening. So then Jude then ties the sin of the angels and the sin of the Sodomites to the sin of the false teachers he is addressing in his letter. All right? And now we're getting into Jude 8. We made it through 6 and 7. Can you believe that? We're going to wrap it up right here. Because this is the punchline for these three verses. These three verses are really linked together. Yet in like manner. So verse 6, fall of the angels. Verse 7, Sodom and Gomorrah. Verse 8, yet in like manner, these people, the people he's referring to his readers, also relying on their dreams, defile the flesh, reject authority, and blaspheme the glorious ones. Okay? Jude's audience got it. They understood this. Most modern day Christians don't. And we're going to get, Anthony's going to pick up with verse 9 as we go forward. And we're going to keep digging into Jude and there's more about this, of what's coming out of it, and then a final, this is where we're at. Okay. I want to try and end this today. And I held this to the end because of what happened, a little bit about what happened yesterday. But this whole concept about the evil, and why are we here today? And why is this stuff, just keep going on? I think it's just, I don't want us to miss the significance of how evil got here, but we also don't want to miss the significance of what Jesus did. Okay? So when I started, I was talking about First Edict and what's going on in Genesis chapter 6, the fall of the angels, how angels came and they, had sex with women. There's Nephilim, and then we have evil, and that's the introduction of evil throughout all this time. And I talked about how in First Edict it describes that when the 200 angels, when they first came down to make this decision to do this bad thing, they were at Mount Hermon. And Mount Hermon that's the mount that when Jesus was at Philip's Caesarea, that's where the gates, and he's talking about on this rock I will build my church. He's not talking about Peter, about becoming the rock and the first pope. He is literally standing at the foot of Mount Hermon. This is the place where evil started. And that's kind of in the land of the Northern Territory, where back in those days, back in the early Israelites, that was the territory known of evil. So they're at the foothill of all this evil. And Jesus comes to Mount Hermon and makes this declaration about, who do you say I am? You're Jesus, the Son of God. You're right. And it's on this rock that I will build my church. And the gates of Hades will not be able to endure it. He's almost pointing back. I can almost see him pointing back at this rock. And then we talked about how when Jesus on the cross, when he died, his flesh died, his spirit remained, and his spirit descended into the prison, and he went to the prisoners below to declare to them, I've won, you've lost. What Jesus does at that moment, he reverses the impact of Mount Hermon. It's a reversal. And so he reverses the impact of what happened at Mount Hermon, and then you have this kingdom that is now, it's the already not yet. You heard that term? Already not yet. The kingdom of God is already. We have the benefit of what Jesus did on the cross, the work on the cross. All of that is ours. It's ours 100% now. But there's a not yet part. There's a part that he's going to come back again. And until that happens, we're still going to have what? Pain and suffering and trouble. But the effects of what happened at Mount Hermon, the effects of what evil entered into our world, our heavenly realm, it's been reversed as of right then. The actual impact on us eternally. But we still have to deal with this stuff. So what do? We share that story. We share the hope that we have of being able to have the already and looking forward to the not yet.
And there's something in this story that helps really greatly as we try to help our neighbors with these horrible events. Why does God allow evil? Well, God's got to scorch earth evil. I mean, he's going to wipe every bit of it out, and the last thing that would be destroyed will be death. But just like God went into Sodom and Gomorrah and had to walk out those that wouldn't be destroyed by the scorched earth, God's got to do that today. God can't scorch earth this place. He's got to send us and his message out to pull us out, to relieve it, to get us in a safe place before he scorches this place. And that takes time. The military can't go in to Afghanistan or wherever and just carpet mob, because just like Marcus, And God can't do that today, and that's one of our answers to people. God cannot destroy the evil that we want destroyed like these gunmen. He can't do that the way you want him to do that and save the people that need to be saved. He's got to take the time to save those who can be saved. Yeah, he's going to scorch this place, but his patience, we still see the evil, but it's God's patience that he's trying to take the time it takes to draw people out and draw them to the Son, and that takes time.
We spent a lot of time, especially when Anthony and I were going through, Paul's worldview through Romans, about laying out that Yahweh had a plan, has a plan, not had a plan, has a plan. And it was a plan that was created long ago, long before this place was ever created. The plan is still in motion. Nothing has changed. All right? The plan's still in motion. What we don't know, we know what's happened before. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know what's going to happen this afternoon. Folks, I was going to go out and buy a pair of gym shoes yesterday, and I was planning on going over to the outlet mall after lunch. That was my plan yesterday.
Locals do not go there on Saturday.
Well,
Yeah.
exactly.
We
So,
know.
so I thought that's stupid. I'm going to go over, instead of going, and I really don't care about going over there anyway. I thought I'm just going to go to Dick's Sporting Goods, and I went in the morning. I'm not trying to make light of anything here by any means. All I'm saying is that you never know what's going to happen, where it's going to happen, what's going to happen. We don't know that. But one of our reasons for being is that when it does happen, we stand in the gap. We're able to offer the hope. We're able to listen with empathy. We're able to cry, to mourn with others. We're able to say, this is absolutely horrendous. Evil is bad. It's not good. But there is good. And there is good in the world. And there is hope. And Jesus is coming back. Okay, I'm done. Thank you so much.